Hello, everyone. It's me, Chloe Archer, back again with a new episode on Tea, Tentacles, and Talk Cozy Conversations about LGBTQ plus romance. Just a couple of quick updates before I get into my interview. I am back from the fantastic Rainbow Readers Cruise. It was an amazing time. It was my very first cruise and one of the best run conferences I've been to as both a reader and an author. So big shout out and kudos to Joel Leslie, his husband Rich, and Joyfully Jay and Mo Sisma, who were all involved in putting that together. I am unable to go again next year because I have commitments at Shimmer and Rare in the UK, which is going to be a big, expensive trip. But I am hoping to return to Rainbow Readers Cruise in 2026. A sort of addendum or update to that amazing cruise. I got to spend some time talking with Joel Leslie, who I have always adored as an audiobook narrator. And I asked him if he might be interested in narrating Siren in the Rain and the three books I have planned in that series thereafter. And he very graciously said yes. And so we are in the process of coordinating, getting onto his schedule so that he can narrate Siren in the Rain. And I will keep you all posted when I have updates on that, but I'm really excited for that. If you haven't checked out my new release, Siren in the Rain, it is part of the Fortune Favors the Fae series, and it is available on Amazon and KU right now. So feel free to check it and all of the other fantastic books in the series out there. Without further ado, I'm going to dive right into our interview for this month. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tea, Tentacles, and Talk Cozy Conversations about LGBTQ plus romance. I'm your host, Chloe Archer, and today I have the wonderful Morgan Lysand with me today. And I'm going to take a moment to introduce my guest. Morgan has always been a reader and a daydreamer. I can relate. Their writer origin story is embarrassing now that they think about it, but also kind of funny, maybe. One day they might share, if people ask nicely. It involves a psychic. Ooh, he's cool. Morgan shares an apartment with their sister in southern Indiana, where they keep the AC on year-round and spend all their money at Target and weekly pizza. Morgan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited and nervous.
Oh, well, we are super excited to have you on the show. And for those tuning in, this is Morgan's first interview, so be gentle. I will be gentle too.
Yes.
We'll talk all kinds of stuff that we love, including books and writing and all of that. So I think that's actually a segue into, can you tell us a little bit about your writer journey? How did you get to becoming a published author? Everyone has a slightly different origin story. Some of us have been writing on paper or in our heads since we were really small.
Right.
Some of us come into it later. How did it work out for you?
In a couple different sections, I guess. Because when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a writer. But as I got older, I was just like, I don't even know how to be a writer, I love reading. And I was just like, how does that happen? The writing part. So I just never pursued it really until I got older. And the psychic bit. So it is so dumb, but I was trying to come up with my bio and I read a bunch of other author bios and everyone's talking about their kids and their pets and their everybody. And I was just like, I don't have pets. I don't have kids. I'm not married. I'll talk about my sister and the psychic. Okay. So my real story, my origin story started in 2019.
Okay.
I helped with a crystal shop. And they're still around. They do Reiki, which is energy healing, and the crystals, and they had a psychic that did tarot readings and massage therapist and all this. And I helped run the shop a couple times, and every Saturday they had a psychic, and sometimes I did Reiki. And we did an exchange one weekend. So I did 30 minutes Reiki and he did a 30-minute tarot reading. And I told him, I'm like, okay, this sounds weird. But I keep having these dreams about like these little dragons like following me stuff. And I want to write their little story. And he's like, go for it. Like, write it. The cards are like, I don't remember exactly how the cards were, but whatever. But they were all like, you'll do well. Like, just forge through and try it. If you don't like it, you can always stop. But you need to give it like 4 months. And I was just like, 4 months is not a long time. So like, I'm like, you know what? I will try this. So I start typing up my little dragon story, and it took me like 4 months to finish it. I don't think I actually finished it, but I got to the point that I was like, I'm bored of the story. I'm moving on. So I changed to a different story.
Okay.
And I just kind of bounced. And I found a website. I do not know how to pronounce it. It's like Scribophile. It's for critiquing.
Oh, yeah.
And I found Lee Colgan there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I love her. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, she's my first writer friend. And really, with her encouragement, like, it pushed me to actually finish a story.
That can be the hardest part sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's just like the psychic gave me the kick in the pants I needed to actually try it. And Lee really is a really big cheerleader of mine that I'm just like, without her, I would not be a writer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think a lot of like when I came into this, like I'm still comparatively new, like my 2-year publiversary a few days, but like so I'm only 2 years into it, but I kind of was really surprised early on by like how important having writer community is to actually being able to sustain yourself as an author.
For sure.
I think, I grew up wanting to be a writer too. And of course, way back in those days when it was only trad, right? All these kind of media representations of authors really tended to be very solitary, isolated, like, often a cabin in the woods somewhere, like David Thoreau or something, right? And but I find that, at least for me, and I'm sure there are some authors who maybe can write without that. There are maybe some writers who are an island unto themselves. I am not one of them. I thrive off of writer community, actually. Like, I love to brainstorm with other authors. I like to collaborate with them. I like to and also just from when you're self-published, the business side of it, swapping ideas and strategies and like, here's something I'm doing that's working, and oh, here's a resource I found. It's so valuable.
For sure. Yeah. And like, I don't have a ginormous group of people that I talk to. It's like a handful of people, but it's like enough for me because I'm very introverted. I'm like, it takes me a hot minute to like add people to my group because I'm like, I got to test your vibes first because I don't know,
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, and I think that's also another thing too, is like writers are really different. There's a like vast spectrum, right? Like my daily life, I'm actually fairly introverted. Like I'm go out to a party or stay home and read a book. It's a book every time, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
But I am a little bit more gregarious than I have found than like other writers, where I've had like some really introverted writers who are like, oh, you're a major extrovert. And I'm like, well, only in certain circumstances, right? Like I can, especially when I'm going to geek out with other geeks about the geeky things we love, right?
Right. Yes.
That's kind of like where I am with that. But like a big group of strangers I have no connection to, I'll like be a wallflower and like be looking at my phone and like, how long do I have to be here? Kind of thing.
For sure.
But I want to circle back because you mentioned tarot, and we have a cool connection coming up because you and I are not only both in the Fortune Favors the Fae multi-author series that's almost wrapping up right now.
Right. There's only 2 more left.
Yes, we're in the upcoming Tales from the Tarot series too, right?
Yes.
And so have you like always had an interest in tarot, or did like this psychic who gave you the tarot reading kind of inspire it in you, or?
I've been playing around with like tarot cards and oracle cards for a while, since like
Mhm.
teenage years.
Sure.
I actually ran a tarot oracle card practice group like about not quite a decade ago, but close to it.
Okay.
At the little shop
Oh, yeah.
that
The
yeah,
crystal shop.
I ran a couple of classes there, but one of my most popular ones was the practice group for tarot and oracle card reading. And I'm like,
Mhm.
it's very interesting because like I don't see it as divination, I see it as guidance. Like, because a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, oh, this is the cards see, like this is exactly what's going to happen in your life in 5 days or whatever. And I'm like, no, that's not really how it works. Like
Yeah.
some people, sure, some of them are like psychic tarot readers, but I'm like, if I'm asking the cards a question, I'm asking for guidance. So
Yeah.
it's like, what's going to help, or what should I have done better, or something like, and you
Right.
have to like word it in a way that the cards aren't playing with you, you know, because they can be
Mm.
tricksy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think like some of it's also bring your own energy
Oh,
to it
for
and
sure.
take
Yes.
out
Yes.
like from it what you need to kind of keep going. So like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll love to just do a little like if I'm feeling a little down or like whatever,
Right.
I'll be like I'll pull out the cards and I'll do a reading for myself that aims to find the most optimistic thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right.
Kind of keep me
Right.
going, right?
Right.
And actually, like I thought it was really interesting when Amanda Mavison, who's also been on the show before,
Right.
came up with this idea because I think, there are actually quite a number of authors who advocate for when you need to come up with a plot element or something that's going to happen in the story or a conflict for a character, you do a tarot card reading
Yes.
that it can
Yeah.
give you a writerly
Right.
inspiration.
I
Uh,
actually bought a book that was based on that. Like,
oh, cool.
yeah, it was just like help you plot the story with tarot or something. I don't remember exactly what it
Right.
was called, but I was just like, this is a fascinating idea because I hadn't have even thought of
Yeah,
that. And I was just like, that's cool. So I played with it a couple times. And I'm like, it
right.
really does help. Because it's like,
Yeah. I mean,
what
sometimes
is
if
the
you get
problem?
stuck, you just need
Yeah,
that one little flicker of inspiration. Now,
absolutely.
conversely, I'm very good friends with Megan Maslow.
Mhm.
Because she and I met her years ago when we were both still readers attending GRL.
Yeah.
She hadn't published yet, but I've watched her amazing journey, and we've been friends for a really long time. But her advice is always when she gets stuck, throw in a dead body. Right?
That's a good idea
Enough,
sometimes.
Megan. Fair enough,
Right?
right? Now, okay, so some of my viewers may not know, but the Tales from the Tarot series also has this amazing set of tarot card decks
Yeah.
with covers from the books coming out. And I believe that Amanda has extended a second order deadline for anybody who wants to get in last minute to order limited time only. There's sort of like a regular version and a holographic version.
Oh,
I liked them both so much I had to order one of each.
I just went with the standard deck because I'm like, oh, I want them both, but I'm going to play with the standard one first because I'll probably
Yeah.
end up getting the other one too. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
they're stunning because Faye has amazing art. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Faye Quinn.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yes. Yeah. It was, I mean, I was really excited when Amanda announced that Faye was going to be doing the covers for the series and that, she was planning to turn this into a tarot card deck too that
Right. That
people
is
could get
really
as a
cool.
collectible. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So very, very neat. Well, I'm sure we'll come back and talk a little bit more about your book in the tarot series coming out later, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Like I got, so I did get invited a little bit later. I think I was invited in like May, and
oh,
like
okay.
a lot of people were invited, I don't know, a year or two ago. And I was like, I was like, yes, I want in on this. And I panicked because I still hadn't gotten my Fae book done. And I was like, oh, I gotta get them both done. And then I had to push both deadlines. And I'm like, it'll be okay. So like I
Right.
feel bad about the pushing it back, but I'm like, I did not think this through. Like But
yes, I this was my first year joining two multi-author series,
yeah, big
and
ones.
yeah, big ones, and it well, my editor and I have decided, Chloe, you're not signing up for any of those next year. You're gonna take a little
Right.
break.
Right. Oh, I've decided the same thing. I was like, no more. I've got 2 collabs for next year. That's it.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
3,
mean,
but
well, and the thing is like often when you have a multi-author series like that, you've got a complex list or set of schedule deadlines and
right.
stuff, and so it can be really difficult to try to modify any of those if
Yeah.
a writer or writers can't make deadlines. And it's a little different if it's my book and I
Right.
goofed on a pre-order or I'm like, I'm not going to make those or whatever, but it's a whole other sort of situation when
Yeah.
like that, much
Yeah.
bigger from
Yeah.
a bigger series. And so I'm really grateful that I had both of these opportunities, and I would
Oh
love to
yeah.
do some more in the future, but I need to kind of like have a breather year and focus on
Yeah.
some of my other stuff, because like the problem I have discovered with this, and I this will lead me into a question for you, but the problem I discovered with joining these is that, did I write a standalone book for either of these? No, I did not. No, it is, each of them are the start of a new freaking series, like spin-off, like of something like related to
Right.
something else that I've written. But I'm like, oh, well, this is bad because I cannot write standalones, and there's only so many series I can be writing all at the same time, which is
Right.
the reason why I'm like, I cannot sign on to any more of these. Like, have you had a similar situation? Like, I mean, it's
So
tricky.
so for the Fortune Favors the Fae,
Yes.
Tales from the Tarot, and Cauldrons and Kisses, I specifically made the stories. They're all standalones, but they're all within the same universe. Because
Okay.
I'm like, this is going to be easier for my brain. Was not. But I was just like, if someone likes the Fae book, they may jump over to tarot. If they like tarot, they may jump
Sure.
over to witch. So I kind of did it strategically like that so that hopefully
Okay.
I get more people, but they're not like all first starters, first series. They're just
Okay, yeah.
part of the same world.
Well,
So I'm
that's,
like,
yeah. I mean, I think it is a smart way to do it.
I thought
Yeah,
it would be easier, but
yeah. My brain is like hardwired for series. That's how I read too. I don't actually read
yeah,
many standalones because I'm like, give me more. Like I just
right.
want more. If I find something I like, I'm actually really annoyed if it's a standalone. I'm like, isn't there more? What are
Yeah.
you doing to me? So apparently I am
I'm
halfway done as a writer.
I'm very bad because I write almost everything as it could be a standalone because I'm
Oh,
like, I got spicy brain. Can I get to the next story? Like
right.
my first book, Starving Incubi, and no, Mermaid Kisses and Starving Incubi. Um, I wrote it with the intention that it would be a series, and it probably will be, but I also ended it as like a standalone. So in case I end up not doing a series, people aren't gonna really miss the next chapter or the next stories. But also my brain is like, no one liked it, we're moving on. And that's not the case. Like I
Yeah.
know people like enjoyed it, and that happened with like Sea and Sky too, because I'm like, I've got coverage for the next 2 books. I just have spicy brain that it's like, I don't know if it's gonna happen. Like,
I,
so it's just like it depends on what my brain's doing. So that's why I tend to write mostly like a standalone with the intentions of
mm.
continuing, you know?
Oh my gosh, I'm like almost the opposite end of the
Yeah.
spectrum, where like my brain has already mapped out like 12 different series that it's going to write, right? And like
Right, right.
in addition to the ones that I'm currently writing, and like I just keep getting more and more ideas, and like my brain, there's like a backlog that's going on. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I've got to keep writing faster and faster so I can like move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. No, I totally get that because I'm like, I've got all these like things listed out. I was like, I'm gonna write this, this, and this, and like this is gonna be a series and stuff. But then my brain's like, is it though? So it's just like,
Well,
I gotta calm down.
well, Well, I've actually had some really interesting conversations with my editor, like in the last few months of just sort of, wow, year two for me was kind of a year to really learn a bit more about my process as a writer and like what does and does not work for me.
Yeah.
Because I think like when you start out, you don't always necessarily know. And nobody is the same on this. So you
Right.
can hear all kinds of advice from people that's radically different and sometimes even contradictory.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that it can be challenging also to juggle being a writer with if you've got a day job,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I think most writers do, right?
Oh yeah.
For all the obvious reasons, but
Right.
and then like, whatever your home or personal situation is, other responsibilities you've got going on there, or if you have health conditions, or if
Right.
so many different factors that come into play. So I'm trying to like my brain and like my number one Clifton strength is
Mm.
futuristic. And so like it's always planning out all these grandiose
Right.
things that we're gonna do. And then I have to kind of like bring in the voice of like logic and reason and be
Oh
like,
yeah.
we got to scale this down a little bit because, don't kill yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. This year was a major learning year because I took on a lot of collabs, and I love collabs because one, it forces me to write the story, so I'm not just sitting here turning my
Mm,
wheels. So I really do love
yeah.
collaborations, and I get to like hang out with a bunch of other people that I normally wouldn't as introvert, that I'm like, I'm too chicken to like go talk to people.
Mm,
like it's okay. I can just sit here by myself. But I have my people that I do talk to. But the
yeah.
collaborations kind of force me to be more outgoing, and I really like that. But this year I just took too much, and I was just like, whatever happens, happens.
Right.
And so next year I dropped like 4 collaborations, and I'm like, I feel a lot better, but
Yeah.
also I really wanted to be in them, but my mental health says no. So it's like this year is
Yeah.
just a lot of learning. And I'm hoping next year, because I put too much on my plate this year, I'm like, I feel like my writing is stagnant. So next year is going to be a learning year. And I'm like, I'm going to do whatever I can to feel like I'm getting better as an author.
Yeah.
You know? That and do audiobooks. Well, more audiobooks.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I love doing audio. Audio
Mhm.
is so much fun. Well,
Yes.
I think okay, I will add a caveat to this. Like, I think you have to be a little bit of an audiophile to enjoy
Oh
doing audio.
yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I've
I
been an
love it.
audiophile since I was a wee youngster in the
Yeah.
80s, listening to books on tape.
Oh
Like,
wow.
and then it like the technology advanced, it was books on CD, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so like, I mean, now it's just like you have so much at your fingertips. And I know, for me, I mean, I've got an Audible account and everything, but for me, a big part of it is when I get limited free time to read, I've often spent so much of my day in front of the computer for work or for
Right.
writing or both that I'm like, I'm going to listen to something just
Right.
to keep my eyes at rest.
Yeah.
And, so I appreciate it when other authors put their stuff in audio so I can access it that
Yeah.
way. And like I also am like really committed to just like broader accessibility in
Oh yeah.
general for readers, because I know
For
like
sure.
I've had a few who've messaged me who are just like, oh, are you going to keep putting more of your books in audio because that's the only way I can read, and this really matters to me,
Right. Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um it is expensive and it's time consuming, and
Right.
but
I,
it's a really fun thing. Yeah.
yeah. I love listening to my words because I'm like,
Yes,
oh my
I do
God, it
too.
makes it sound so good.
I know, I know. There are some authors who don't like, they don't like
Oh,
listening to their books. I do, like,
I
especially
do.
like, one of my ongoing series, my Tentacular Tales series, I
Right.
will go back and listen to the audiobooks when I'm working on the next book because I'm like,
Oh yeah.
hey, remember what happened?
Right, right. Yeah,
Have I
yeah,
talked about this yet? Oh, you know.
yeah. And I'm like, I've been working with Zachary Zaba.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
He's amazing. And he's so nice too. Cause I'm like, I get nervous because I've talked to a couple and no one's been like mean or anything, but I'm like, I'm a little baby fish over here, but I would love you to be the narrator. And it's like they don't care. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think they're like, sure, it's fine. I'm like, okay, cool. But like, I don't know, Zachary, he's amazing. And I don't know, it's just like I'm very happy with how things are going with the audio
Oh,
stuff.
good.
Because I'm like, I don't have like the podium or Tantor or anything like that. I'm just like, whenever I get the money, it goes to audiobook because I'm like, I want the audiobook. Like,
Right.
if they don't sell, I don't care. I want the audiobook.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think audio can I mean, there's pitfalls, there's,
Oh, for sure.
like, but I will say from my experience, and I think you kind of dovetail with me a little bit on this, is that I don't write contemporary. I write
A little bit.
primarily sci-fi, paranormal, and
Right,
eventually fantasy, right? So,
right,
but I find those kinds of subgenres do quite well in audio because they're not as oversaturated as
right,
the contemporary market is.
right.
I've heard it can be a lot harder to get a foothold with audiobooks in contemporary.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Look,
um
it does
yeah,
help when you have a narrator that people like too.
yes,
Like, that does make a major difference.
it does. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
because my first audiobook, Merman Kisses, he's phenomenal. Like, I love what he did too.
Mm.
TJ Clark, he normally does MF stuff though. So
Okay.
like he did I don't really have all that many people interested in that one. The Zachary Zaba stuff, like, it sells really well. So like, it matters who's your narrator is.
Yeah.
But I don't regret having TJ Clark do the first one. He did really, really good.
Nice, nice. I'll have to check that out. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna get to meet Zachary at the Northern Rainbow Romance
Yeah,
Retreat.
he's super
So
great.
that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I saw he was going to be there and I was like, now I really want to go. Because I already wanted to go, but I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
have the PTO. It's fine. The pitfalls of a full time job.
I know it can be challenging. Thankfully, I have
Yeah,
a little bit more flexibility with my
yeah,
day job to take
yeah.
time like this,
That's
um
awesome.
but yeah, this kind of actually intersects with one of my questions, which is do you use a pseudonym for your writing? Some people, when you've got a day job, for all kinds of reasons, you may opt to use a pseudonym. Where do you fall in that camp?
I do use a pen name. And the reason is kind of dumb because, like, okay, I do work for a law firm. I'm a records clerk, so I basically just do data entry all day.
Yeah.
Um, and my real name is Sierra. I don't like the way Sierra looks on a cover. So I'm like, I'm not going to use my real
Mm.
name like at all. So I went with Morgan Lysand. Morgan, because it's a very gender neutral name and I just like it. And then Lysand, I really love Ariana Nash's Silk and Steel series, and one of the characters' name is Lysander. So I dropped the ER and I was like, Morgan Lysand.
Aw,
And it felt very fantasy. And my original intention as a
yeah,
writer was to just write like fantasy. So I don't know.
that's
That's how it
so
came.
cool. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, I can't remember if I've actually said this on the show before. I mean, most people know my name it's a pen name. Partly because like I'm not like if you Google me enough, you can probably find out who I really am.
Right.
Um,
Like, I'm
but
not shy.
right now, no, no, no.
Like, I use my real
Uh,
name on Facebook. I'm like, a lot
yeah,
of people know who I am on Facebook. So I'm like, it's just I don't
right.
like the way Sierra looks on a cover. And like,
Mm,
there are plenty of Sierra authors out there, like Sierra
right.
Simone, and
Yeah, yeah.
like, there's a bunch. And I'm
Yeah.
like, Sierra Cook does not look good on a cover.
Mm,
Like, I don't like it. So I just was like,
yeah.
pen name.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think there's a lot of utility to pen names for all
Oh
kinds of
yeah.
reasons. For me, it was mostly just a practicality in the sense that for my day job, I have like academic publications, but
Right,
it's a
right.
legal name. And so I didn't want
Right.
people Googling my fiction and
Right.
finding some weird academic article where they're
For
like,
sure.
"What is this?"
Yeah,
Like,
that totally makes sense.
right? But yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about your current book. I know we talked we jumped ahead a little bit to talk about Tales from the Tarot, but today you're actually talking a little bit about your most recent release, Kisses at the Crossroads, which is part of the Fortune Favors the Fae series. Can you tell us a little bit about it and kind of like what inspired you to write this particular story?
Like I have to think about it. Okay. So
Hmm.
like I said, there's three books: The Fortune Favors the Fae, The Tales from the Tarot, and Kisses and Cultures and Kisses. I always get confused. Cultures and Kisses or Kisses and Cultures. One or the other. They're all set in the same world.
Yeah.
And the idea actually came after I got invited to the Cultures and Kisses one, because
Yeah.
um we have to have a witch in our
Yeah.
story. And I was just like, well, what about a witch and a demon? I was like, well, demons are kind of common. Let's make it a crossroads demon. So
Mm.
I decided that each three of these books has a crossroads demon as one of the love interests. Um, so it's just like, well, Fortune Favors the Fae, I have to have a Fae character. So we'll have the Fae and the crossroads demon. And my original idea for Fortune, I already had like a captured Fae. And I was just like, I'll take it from a fantasy to paranormal romance
Hmm.
and set it in this world. This town I'm calling Hex, Indiana, because I always write in Indiana, like Southern Indiana,
Oh,
because
write what you know.
exactly, and like I wrote an entire chaotic like author note at the end of this book. I'm like, I always do Southern Indiana because if there's a story in Indiana, it's always Northern Indiana, and what the heck is so special about Northern Indiana? Like I went off in this author note, like playfully, because I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
really care.
Right.
But so like my whole thing is like I kind of want to have this like little spooky feeling town throughout the three books. Like it's not that spooky in this one because we're kind of set in a strip joint for most of it.
Okay.
Because the Fae is he was captured um by a witch that owns a strip joint. So
Okay.
he has to
Okay.
dance at the strip joint, and his wings glow. So he has to make his wings glow and stuff. So it's just like Lark getting free. And he's been trying to get free for the last 10 years, but he's been tethered to the witch and he didn't know. So his magic didn't work the way it was supposed to. And so he summons this crossroads demon, and the demon's like, I'll help you. Like, you're the first one that summoned me in like 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. It's
Mhm.
been a hot minute. 20 years. So yeah, I'll help you. And so it's just like them coming together and each being free. So,
Mhm.
and a lot of times my stories, I usually write about self-worth because it's usually like, poke poke Sierra, you do have self-worth, so it's like these little kind of love letters to myself, be like, you can
Yeah.
be you and someone will love you kind of thing. So it's
Mhm.
just like Lark is coming into his own, and so is Pike, and together they're just better. So
That's great.
I know
That
that
sounds
was kind of chaotic, but
No, that's
I'm not
great.
that great at talking about the stories because I'm like, I don't know, things happen. They fall in love. There's a demon.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I don't have that elevator pitch down or anything.
it takes time
Yeah.
to really,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
learn
Yeah.
how to nail that,
Oh
essentially.
yeah, for sure.
Um, well, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with doing the cover for this book, and just your experience with covers in general? So for the Fortune Favors the Fae series, we all worked with the cover designer Natasha Snow. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I was super excited. This is my first Natasha Snow cover, and I was like, holy crap, yes, because I've been drooling all over Natasha Snow covers for years because they're always amazing. And I'm like, I don't care how much it costs. I am so excited. So, and she was amazing to work with. Like I had her switch out the model, and that was it. Like her first version, everything was like perfect except for the model, mostly because the model kind of came off as high school bully instead of like captured
Oh,
Fae. So
yeah.
like I needed him different.
Models can be
But
hard.
oh, they are for sure. I hate looking for them because I'm like, what I'm looking for is so hard to find, and I'm like, somebody else do it for me. But she was great
Yeah.
and fast. Like she's
Yes.
got all of us to work with, and it's just like
Oh.
holy crap. And like I never would have come up with what she came up with, and I'm like, you're amazing. This is amazing.
Yeah, her talent is phenomenal.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so I mean I was a reader in the genre for years before I ever
right,
decided to write and publish something. And I had always been drawn visually to any cover. And like I could start to recognize, like I could guess, I think that's a Natasha Snow.
right,
That's a
right,
Natasha Snow cover. And I was
right,
usually right, right. Um,
right.
but I love them all. They were just so vibrant and
Yes.
stunning. And so
Oh
like when
yeah,
I first started writing, I was like, okay, I'm just going to save up money because I'm going to have her do the covers for my series.
yeah,
And yeah, so I was really actually very excited when this series decided to hire her too, because I would say
yeah.
like 98% of my books have been done, the covers by Natasha Snow.
Right. And I'm
I
like,
love her so much. I mean, there are other like very talented cover artists out there,
oh
and I'm
yeah,
excited to like, branch out and work with some of them. But for some things, she's just my go-to because she always creates something really phenomenal.
right. She's definitely so good. I'm like, because my first covers, I did get covers because I was on a very tight budget.
Oh,
And
sure.
I also didn't know what the shit I was doing anyways. So I did um uh
I
like a
can make.
typography kind of thing. And I was
Oh,
just like,
yeah.
that was not the best decision for this book.
Right.
Um and then I used for Soon Skies Recover, I did, I don't know how to say it, Mibler, the mother company of Get Covers. So
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
how to say it. I'm very bad with pronunciation. So I'm like, I use them. And like both companies were fine, but they take forever and a day to get through stuff because they're working with so many people. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I much prefer working with like a single artist. So like the Natasha Snow experience was amazing.
Yeah.
Like super amazing. And I'm like, I definitely plan on doing like that from now on when I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's really consummate professional and,
Yeah.
very, very talented. Very, very
Oh
talented.
yeah.
I'd love to
Yeah.
actually get her on this show sometime because I'd really love to talk with her as a cover
That would
art,
be cool.
which I think would be really cool. So yeah,
Heck yeah.
I'm gonna try.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
So we've talked, and I'll put a link in the show notes for folks for Kisses at the Crossroads, so they can check that out. But we've talked a lot about your writing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your reading. So have you been a reader in the genre for a long time? Do you tend to like to read the same kinds of tropes that you write, or do you gravitate to other things?
I think I've been reading MM since 2019, unless this is so bad. We count the slash that I read as a teenager. Or the yaoi. But anyways, I don't really count that. It can be. I don't whatever y'all want to think. I don't it's fine.
It's like a
But
subgenre
yeah,
or related
yeah, yeah. Like
category.
I'm not ashamed of reading slash or yaoi. Um, but anyways, I think 2019 is when I got started reading it, and I think I can definitely be wrong. It may have been Ariana Nash that popped my cherry.
Nice.
Like, I think I found her, and then I found Lee Colgan through the website, Scrabble or whatever it's called, and then I just kept reading because I'm like, there's just something about that I can't get in MF. Like, it's just, I don't know, the vibes are different, which makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I actually tend to read a lot darker than what I write.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
yeah. Like my intentions were actually to start with like dark fantasy, like just fantasy or
Oh,
dark fantasy.
yeah.
Um, but I ended up doing paranormal romance, and that's mostly what I write. Or daddy for contemporary because I do write a little bit of contemporary,
Oh,
and
okay.
most of that is daddy stuff. And I'm just like, oh no, I like it. um,
Yeah,
but yeah, the darker stuff is usually what I gravitate towards.
that's interesting.
Um, it also just depends on my mood because sometimes I do need like this super sweet stuff, like kind
Oh,
of what I
sure.
write. But
Well, yeah,
mostly
I'm a
I'm
total
like,
mood reader
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm a mood writer.
same. I'm
So
like,
that can be challenging.
for sure.
But for me, I've always really gravitated toward romantic comedy of any
Yeah,
kind, right? And like many people, I started out in MF, like reading
right, right.
growing up, because that was really all that was around. I would occasionally find an old lesbian pulp novel or something like that, but
Right.
there weren't really a whole lot of alternatives.
No,
And I remember when I was like around like my or very early 20s, there were a slew of fantastic romantic comedy that blended it with like paranormal or sci-fi, right?
right,
So like
right.
there were like Katie McAllister, like I loved her like Dragon series and her
Yeah,
vampire one. It was so funny. And like there were a whole bunch of them. I really liked the Mary Janice Davidson's like Undead Unwed series and stuff like
yeah,
that back when. And when I came in, I just felt like there weren't a lot of people that were blending like romantic comedy with the subgenres that I like,
right,
paranormal and sci-fi
right,
and stuff. Tended to be more contemporary. And I'm not against contemporary, like I'll read those ones too,
right, right.
but I really loved the combo. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Well,
well, that's really cool. That's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I don't normally do the dark too much because it tends to like tank my mood or like amp up. I have an
Yeah.
anxiety disorder, and so it tends to
Mm.
sometimes the darker stuff, there's a lot more like, oh God, like what's
Right,
happened, and it
right.
like is not so great for
Yeah. And for me, it's like it helps take my anxiety away because I'm like, at least I'm not
um
dealing with what they got going on.
right. Yeah, I mean that again, this is why it's like, I
Yeah.
have nothing against
Oh
dark stuff.
yeah.
And like I just find it really fascinating that for like some people like me, it like triggers the anxiety. For other people, it's
Right.
like, oh, this is cathartic for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
so fascinating how we can all be so different
For
with
sure.
yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm
uh
like, I used to only read like fantasy. Um,
oh,
and like I think 2019 is like even when I started reading romance too, because before I
oh
was just like,
really?
eh. And then I started reading it. I was like, oh, this might be my catnip. So it's just like 2019 was a big year, apparently.
It's really funny because a lot of authors I've talked to this year, myself included, we started out as voracious like high epic fantasy readers
Yeah.
um way back, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
And I still have like aspirations to write an epic fantasy MM series,
Right.
right? But where I'm going to fit that in my schedule. I don't know. Because
Right.
I already write long. Like my books are usually 100K or higher, right? And like that's not a high fantasy book in my opinion is usually like 600-700 pages or more,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I actually haven't really seen many folks in our genre do high epic fantasy that way. Like
Right.
it's more kind of like romance with some fantasy
Right.
elements, or and it's shorter, like a lot
Right.
shorter.
Right.
And
I
so
write short.
oh,
Yeah, like
I could write
I
shorter because
wish I could figure out how to do longer.
that was so hard. But yeah, I mean, we always want like the grass is always greener, right?
Right, right.
But like,
Yeah.
but I want to like blaze a trail in the like 700 page like epic fantasy novel to
Heck
end
yeah.
all fantasy novel. I
That'd be
mean,
awesome.
like the closest that I can think of just off the top of my head, of course, would be like the TJ Klune Lightning Struck
Right.
art series. But even those books are not, they're
Right.
not that long, like in
Right. Right.
the scope of, and nor are they as epic as like,
Right.
a
Right.
typical epic fantasy would be. But
Exactly.
um yeah, so I don't know what this is what I call like a bucket list, like life ambition
Right.
sometime.
Oh yeah.
Before I die, hopefully that won't be anytime soon. But like
Right.
I will write this. I have some ideas for it already. And stupid characters in the background that are like, when will you
Right.
read my story? And
Right. The characters always come first. It's like you need to sit down and wait your turn.
ooh. Well, and like I was telling some readers that I was talking to not that long ago, like I think my problem with the series thing is that I write side characters who have obvious main character energy, where you're like,
Oh,
they've got to have a book. And I'm like,
yep.
yes, they do. And damn it. Like,
Right. Yes.
ah,
Or it's like I'll fall in love with a side character. I'm like, you need a story. I don't know what I'll write you, but you're getting one.
right, right. Well, maybe partly because I've been trying to think about this personally, like maybe because I started out as a epic fantasy, like that was my crack, right? As a reader. Like when I
Yeah.
was growing up, like I actually I did not like YA books very much as a young adult.
Heck no.
Like they did not speak to me, but like when I was in fourth grade, my dad let me, he would always, when we go to the bookstore, let me pick one book in the store, whatever it was I wanted, I could buy it. And he didn't censor my reading choices at all.
Yeah.
That's when I discovered like a Terry Brooks, like tome.
Yeah.
The cover looked neat. I read the back and I was like, ooh, adventure, like magic. How have I never seen this before? And like I was hooked. Like I stayed in my room for days reading that book one summer, like
Right.
just day after day. And then I was like, I have to go get the other ones. And like that was
Yep.
the start of the obsession, right? And oh my gosh, it's always been a thing. But if you know epic fantasy at all, you know that like there's a large ensemble cast
Oh,
always,
yeah.
right? Like you've
Oh yeah.
got main characters, but you've also got a lot of interesting, compelling side
Right.
characters. And so like for me, a story is often only as good as your side characters are. For me as a
Yeah.
reader, right? Because it's like the side characters are also, in my view, like they are good foils sometimes to your main
Right.
characters. Sometimes they can offer necessary comedic relief or levity. Sometimes they're the voice of reason
Right.
among the unreasonable. Like, I mean, they have
Right.
so many functions, and I feel like
Right.
also again, partly like I need to have people in my life to keep, to help
Right.
who I am. And so like a lot of my characters also need people in their lives. They're not I would actually probably really struggle to write a deeply isolated character who wanted to stay isolated,
Yeah.
right?
That'd be
Um,
hard for
I
a
think,
lot of
yeah,
people, I would think.
yeah.
Maybe a
Yeah,
lot of readers would find it hard to read too.
well, and I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
very hard to build a romance around
Oh,
that.
for sure.
Gotta sort of
Yeah.
force that character to come out of
Oh,
the
yeah.
isolation, like, out of their shell and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And maybe they only do for the love interest, right?
Right.
And how does the love interest balance that with the other people they have in their life? It'd be very, very hard, I think. But
Oh, yeah.
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 Anyway, I've
Yeah.
like
And there's,
wandered off on a
yeah.
huge
It's like there's
here.
just so many working pieces with epic fantasy too.
Right.
And it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, oh, wow. It'd be so
Yes.
fun though.
Yeah, no, but and if other authors in the genre beat me to an epic fantasy, I'm not going to complain. Like I will
Right.
be first in line to read that book. But if they're not going to do it, I'm going to carry the torch, man. Like I am
Yeah.
committed. Going to happen.
Someone's got to start.
Well, okay, so I have plugged this once before, but I will plug it again because in case people have not watched the previous episode where I did do this.
Yeah.
But I did encounter an epic fantasy years ago that was trad published. And of course it's more closed door
Yeah.
right? But you know that they become a couple, and this was Lynn Flewelling's Night Runner series, and I loved the couple. And actually both of the guys in that series are like basically depicted as bisexual, but they like fall in love and
Right.
they have like epic questy, like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And there's all kinds of good hurt comfort, and yeah, it's a great series. It's a little older, but it still, I think, stands the test of time in my opinion. So if you are looking for more of an
For
high
sure.
fantasy, epic fantasy that is closed door, I would check out that series. But I read that and I was like, why isn't there more of this? Where
Yeah.
are more books like this? So yeah, so I'm gonna write one day. One day.
Heck yeah.
But do you
Heck yeah.
have any kind of like, as a writer, like, do you have like some like big goal project someday that you want to write that you haven't written yet?
Yes.
Ooh, okay, give
That
us a,
I'm
you don't have to tell us everything,
hoping
but give us a
I'm
hint.
hoping it'll be next year. But
Oh,
it's actually the idea that came to me for my original idea for the Tales from the Tarot book, because
oh,
I was
okay.
gonna do a fantasy, but then like everybody else was doing like paranormal romance and urban fantasy. So I was like, I don't want to be the outlier. So
Oh,
I part of why Hex Indiana is a thing. But it's like it's a shifter fantasy kind of thing, and like tentatively I'm calling it the Hawk King's Sparrow, because it's like a hawk kingdom and a sparrow kingdom and they're like enemies.
ooh.
But like it ends up being like a marriage of convenience thing, and I'm planning
Oh,
on it being a duology, because I want it to span like all the stuff they have to go through,
yeah.
like to end the war that they've been going for generations. And like I don't know, it's got a lot of moving parts in my head. But I
Nice.
really like once that idea popped in, I was just like, I really want to write this. And it was
I
originally going to be a single, and I'm like, nah, we're going to do a duology
love it.
and like make it the whole thing that needs to be. So it's like
Yeah.
I also have to figure out, because next year I'm like, it's the learning year. 2025 is going to be a learning year. So I have to figure out how to write longer stories. So yeah. So it's just like, I don't know, like I'm going to write what I intended to write whenever I started writing. It was like the fantasy stuff. And it will be a little bit darker than my usual Morgan
Hmm.
Lysand stuff. So I'm like, is it gonna be a Morgan Lysand story or is it gonna be a different pen name? So
Oh,
it's kind of something like
yeah.
that. Because Morgan Lysand is very fluffy. Like I do have some books that have dark backstories for a couple of the
Sure,
characters,
sure.
but the stories themselves are fluff.
Yeah.
Like, so it's just like we gotta figure that out. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah, it's, I feel like I get a lot of competing responses to that, right? Like I've done polls with readers and various things like that, where some of them, I found actually a lot of them really surprisingly were like, oh no, don't do another pen name for something different,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
They're like, well, I'll, depending on, I'll read the blurb, and if I want to check it out, I'll check it out, and if not, then,
right,
um
right.
so
But
like
like,
for the people who are already your readers, they often don't want you for whatever reason to use
right,
your name. But then the question is sort of like, well, what about the readers who aren't your readers yet? Like, does the
right,
new pen name serve you better in that regard? I don't know.
right,
I know that there's
right.
also like a lot of like the logistics of managing more than one pen
Oh
name.
yeah,
I
for
don't
sure.
know if I could do that with my day job. I have enough trouble managing the one.
I'm like, I
I'm
do technically have two right now. One is for Smashwords only,
Oh, okay.
because it is cessed.
Yeah,
And I'm like, it's not too bad, but it's two different platforms too. One is
yeah,
Smashwords, and then one is
right.
Amazon. And the Amazon one's the ones that I um, promote more and dedicate
Yeah,
a lot more time to, because
sure.
yeah, it's what most people are reading. But like I found that my audience, they do read like a vast range of things. Like they read my fluff, but they also read like the dark stuff. So I'm like, I could be
Yeah,
fine, but I'm also like, if I get someone that only reads dark and then they want to read more of my stuff and they go read the other stuff,
right,
they're gonna be like, what the hell am I reading? Because it is fluff.
right.
It's just
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I've thought about like if I were gonna write something really different that I would look into kind of like branding a subcategory on my website or something that's for
yeah,
Like, here's my main stuff. Here's this side thing that I do that's different in these ways,
Right.
whatever. But
Right.
I I don't know. I'll cross that bridge when and if I
Yeah.
do it, basically, is my plan.
Yeah. Like, I'm not ashamed of the Smash word stuff. I just don't want people to be able to like connect Sierra to Smash words
Oh,
because of
sure.
like job that for job purposes for sure. The
Of
Morgan
course.
Lysand stuff, I don't care if anybody connects me and my real name because I post my real name stuff on Facebook like because I forget that I have the Morgan Lysand profile. I was like, oh yeah, I do have that.
Yep.
So, but the other stuff, I'm like, no, we need to be separate. So it's okay.
Well, Morgan, we are just about out of time here. So, thank you, of course, so much for coming on the show. But I want to see if you could give some of my viewers a little bit of a preview. We've kind of heard a little bit about stuff you have coming in 2025. Can you tell us a little bit about the upcoming tarot and anything else you might want to share?
Right. So tarot, if anybody has read Kisses in the Crossroads, this is Van, Crossroad Demon Van, his story with the Nephilim, the title guy. And then the Witches one is the one that I'm personally most excited about, because it's the one that sparked the whole Hex Indiana idea. And it's how to summon a memory. And it's Warwick and Ethan, and they've been friends since they were kids. And like all of a sudden, Ethan is taken away, and Warwick is just kind of trying to find him. And like, I just cannot wait to get into their story because it's just, I don't know. I don't know. I just love it because I'm like, I've got it all up in my head, and I'm just like, I need to get it down.
I know how that.
So, and then I've got my Christmas stories.
Oh my goodness.
um, yeah. Like I've got 3 Christmas stories. 2 of the collabs. I'm not entirely sure if we're allowed to talk about them yet, but I'm like, if you go to my Amazon page, they're there.
Right.
And
Goodness.
my third Santa's Naughty Workshop is coming. It is fruitcake and chestnuts. And it's enemies to lovers kind of dealio. And a redemption arc for fruitcake because he's been kind of an ass in the other 2 books. So I'm pretty excited to get to his.
Oh, we all like a
So,
good redemption story.
yes. I'm just like, but I definitely took a lot on with the collab. So I'm like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Cause I'm
Oh
like,
my
I'm
goodness.
still writing.
Oh, I know the feeling. Oh my God. Well, hang in there and
Yeah.
luck. And I will
Thanks.
put links in the show notes to where folks can find Morgan and
Well,
Morgan's books. Thank you again for
thank
taking the
you.
time to talk with me today. And thanks to all my viewers for tuning in. I'll see you again next month. Bye.
Thank you.